My name is Elena Whitmore. I'm 31 years old. I work as a dental hygienist in a small family practice just outside Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I pay my own bills. I pack my own lunches. I built my life brick by brick with no safety net. And on September 19th, at exactly 6:18 in the evening, my father tried to push me down a staircase while my 4-month-old daughter was in my arms. That sentence still feels unreal when I say it out loud. The house on Hawthorne Drive looked exactly like it always had: cream siding, trimmed hedges, a polished brass mailbox that my mother wiped down every Sunday like it was a holy object. From the outside, it was the picture of middle-class respectability. Inside, it had always been something else. I was standing at the top of the staircase when it happened. My daughter, Lily, was pressed against my chest in her carrier. She smelled like baby lotion and milk. Her tiny fingers were hooked in the collar of my shirt. My father stepped in front of me. "You don't understand what you're throwing away," he said. His voice wasn't loud yet. That came later. At first, it was calm, controlled, the same voice he'd used my entire childhood whenever he wanted to remind me I was disappointing him. "I'm not throwing anything away," I said. "You are," he snapped. "You're choosing wrong." Wrong. I had been wrong my entire life in that house. When my older brother, Marcus, turned 16, he got a brand new Jeep. Red. With a ribbon on top. My parents clapped like he'd cured cancer. When I turned 16, I got his old bike. The one with the bent wheel. Marcus went to a 4-year university. My parents paid every tuition bill without blinking. I went to community college and took out loans I'm still paying off. When I asked why, my father said, "Marcus has more drive." I believed him for years. Until someone else showed me I wasn't invisible. That someone was my husband, Daniel. Daniel is a diesel mechanic. He has grease under his nails half the time and the gentlest heart I've ever known. When we met at a friend's cookout, he listened when I spoke. He asked questions. He remembered the answers. The first time he met my parents, he brought my mother flowers. She inspected them like they were contaminated. He shook my father's hand. My father squeezed just a little too hard. Daniel committed 2 unforgivable sins in my family. He wasn't wealthy. And he loved me loudly. We got married in a courthouse. Small. Simple. Perfect. When Lily was born in May, Daniel cried harder than I did. My parents sent a text, "Congratulations," with a period. Marcus sent a thumbs-up emoji. That was it. I told myself I didn't care. I lied. The family meeting was supposed to be about my grandmother's estate. My grandmother, Margaret Whitmore, built her wealth herself. Rental properties. Smart investments. She wasn't flashy, drove the same car for a decade, but she was sharp. Sharp like glass. 3 years ago, my father moved her into assisted living. He told everyone she had severe dementia. "She doesn't know who anyone is," he'd said solemnly. I didn't question it. That's what shame does. It keeps you quiet. At the meeting in August, my father laid out the new version of her trust. According to him, whichever grandchild was the primary caregiver of a minor child would receive the house and 70% of the estate. Marcus had no children. I did. Which meant, technically, it all came to me. Unless I signed temporary custody of Lily over to Marcus. Or signed away my inheritance entirely. I laughed when he said it. A sharp, disbelieving sound. "You're joking." He wasn't. Marcus stared at the floor. My mother folded her hands and said softly, "Marcus needs this more. Needs it more." Like my baby was a bargaining chip. Daniel stood up and said 4 words. "We're leaving. Now." And we did. But they didn't stop. Texts. Calls. Guilt. "You're tearing this family apart. Think about your brother. Don't be selfish. I blocked numbers. They found new ones. Then I drove past my parents' house one afternoon and noticed something strange. New kitchen windows. Fresh landscaping. And a brand new truck in the driveway. My father didn't make that kind of money. Something didn't add up. I didn't know yet that the missing piece of the puzzle was sitting in a small assisted living room with a sharp mind and no phone. Her name was Nurse Camille Reyes. She called me on a Tuesday morning. I hope this isn't inappropriate, she said carefully, but I found your number listed as an emergency contact for your grandmother. My heart stuttered. Is she okay? She's fine physically, Camille said. But I need to ask you something. Has she been formally diagnosed with advanced dementia? Yes, I said automatically. There was a pause. Because she runs the Tuesday trivia group, Camille said gently. And she wins. Silence flooded my car. She reads financial newspapers, Camille continued. She balances her checkbook. She remembers staff birthdays. I pulled over. She told me her son is stealing from her, Camille said quietly. I was instructed to treat that as paranoia. My hands started shaking. She doesn't sound paranoid, the nurse added. 3 years. 3 years my grandmother had been labeled incompetent. 3 years my father had sole control of her finances. 3 years I hadn't visited. I drove there the next morning. When I walked into her room, she looked smaller. But her eyes were the same. Elena, she said immediately. No hesitation. No confusion. She saw Lily in my arms and gasped. No one told me, she whispered. That broke me. Not the money. Not the lies. That. She held Lily and cried softly. Then she wiped her tears and got very still. Your father thinks I'm confused, she said. She wasn't. She told me the original trust was equal. 50-50 between Marcus and me. No conditions. No clauses. The new one? She had never approved. And the deposits, she said, her voice turning cold. They're wrong. The properties generated over $8,000 a month. She was receiving barely $3,000. The rest was disappearing. For 3 years. I sat in my car afterward with Lily asleep in her car seat. My world had shifted. This wasn't about favoritism anymore. This was fraud. This was theft. This was elder abuse. And I suddenly understood the desperation behind the custody demand. The clause had been designed for Marcus. I just happened to have the baby first. My father had rigged the system. And lost control of it. So he tried to take control of me instead. That night I told Daniel everything. He listened. Then he said, we fight. And we did. We contacted my grandmother's original attorney. We pulled bank records. We requested a full cognitive evaluation. Every document was another crack in my father's carefully polished image. By September 15th, a formal complaint was filed with the district attorney's office. My father didn't know. On September 19th, he believed I was coming to surrender. Instead, I walked into his house with the truth already in motion. Back to the staircase. Back to the shove. My heel slipped. My hand caught the railing. I twisted so Lily's head wouldn't hit. My back slammed into carpeted wood. Pain exploded through my wrist. Lily screamed. And from above me, my father shouted. Get rid of that child. Get rid of that child. My child. Daniel was there in seconds. He lifted me. Checked Lily. She was fine. Shaking. Crying. But fine. Then the front door opened. And in walked my grandmother. With her cane. Standing straight. Followed by her attorney. Followed by Nurse Reyes. My father's face drained of color. He had told the world she couldn't recognize her own family. And there she stood. Clue-eyed. Present. Alive. She looked at him. Gordon, she said quietly, I am ashamed of you. It was worse than screaming. Police arrived minutes later. Statements were taken. Photos documented. And 4 days after that, my father was arrested in his own driveway. Handcuffs. Felony charges. The stolen money traced. The lies exposed. My mother had known. She had her own account with transfers. She was charged too. Marcus entered treatment under my grandmother's condition for his inheritance. The house was sold. We bought our own. Small. Bright. Ours. And sometimes, late at night, I stand at the top of my own staircase and look down. I think about how close everything came to breaking. And I look at my daughter sleeping peacefully. And I know this. The invisible child grew up. And the invisible child protected her own. The morning they arrested my father was cold and painfully quiet. I wasn't there. But I saw the footage later. A neighbor's security camera caught everything. 6:42 a.m. My father, Gordon Whitmore, stepped out of the house in his navy bathrobe, holding a travel mug. He looked irritated, like he was already planning his complaints for the day. Then 2 police cruisers pulled up. He didn't panic at first. He thought it was a mistake. People like him always think that. He pointed toward the street, arguing. His posture stiff. His chin high. Then one of the officers read the charges aloud. Financial exploitation of an elderly adult. Theft by deception. Forgery. Assault. Reckless endangerment of a minor. You can see the exact moment his confidence collapses. His shoulders drop. The mug falls from his hand. Coffee spills across the driveway he renovated with stolen money. He looks back at the house. My mother, Elaine, stands in the doorway. Pale. Frozen. For the first time in my life, my father looked small. And for the first time in my life, he wasn't in control. The district attorney didn't rush. They built it brick by brick. Bank records from 3 years. Transfers totaling over $192,000. Forged authorization signatures. Medical documentation falsely claiming dementia. The assisted living facility cooperated immediately once they saw the cognitive evaluation results. My grandmother, Margaret, scored higher on memory testing than most people in their 70s. She was 83. Sharp. Alert. Furious. She gave a statement that lasted nearly 2 hours. At one point she said, I raised him better than this. And her voice broke. That was the only time. Marcus showed up at my house 3 days after the arrest. I almost didn't open the door. He looked worse than I remembered. Unshaven. Red eyes. Jittery hands. You ruined him, he said before I could speak. I stared at him. He ruined himself, I replied. He was trying to fix things, Marcus snapped. The trust wasn't fair. Fair. I felt something hot and sharp rise in my chest. You mean equal? He needed more time. He needed help, I said quietly. Not theft. He didn't have an answer for that. For the first time in our lives, there was no parental shield between us. No one to tilt the room in his favor. It was just the truth. He left without another word. 2 weeks later, my grandmother called him directly. Her condition was simple. Rehabilitation program. 6 months minimum. Proof of attendance. Or he would be removed from the trust entirely. No negotiation. He agreed. Not because he wanted to. Because he had run out of options. My mother was arrested 12 days after my father. They found a secondary account in her name with nearly $47,000 transferred from my grandmother's properties. She claimed she didn't know the source. The paper trail said otherwise. She took a plea deal. Probation. restitution payments, mandatory financial ethics counseling. When she called me, her voice was barely audible. I never thought it would go this far. I held the phone in silence for a long time. It went this far when he pushed me, I said finally. She cried. But even then, she never said the words "I'm sorry." Not once. The preliminary hearing was surreal. My father wore a grey suit. The same one he used for church on Easter. As if dressing respectable could erase the charges. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Lily, who was asleep in Daniel's arms in the back row. When the prosecutor described the staircase incident, something in the room shifted. Assault is one thing. Assault while holding a baby is another. My grandmother testified calmly. Clear voice. Steady hands. She explained the trust. The forged documents. The isolation. When she finished, she looked directly at her son and said, "You underestimated me." He had no defense for that. Bail was denied after the prosecution argued he posed a financial flight risk. He was taken back into custody that afternoon. And just like that, the man who controlled every room for 35 years was escorted out of one in handcuffs. Justice doesn't feel the way movies say it will. It's not fireworks. It's not applause. It's quiet. It's sitting at your kitchen table at 10 p.m. with your baby monitor humming and realizing your entire childhood was built on manipulation. I started remembering things differently. The discipline. The lessons. The constant comparison to Marcus. It wasn't about love. It was about control. Daniel found me one night staring at nothing. "You okay?" he asked gently. "I don't know who my father really is," I said. He knelt in front of me. "You know exactly who he is now." And he was right. The truth doesn't create a monster. It reveals one. 3 months into rehab, Marcus asked to meet me. Public place. Coffee shop. He looked thinner. Clearer. Less defensive. "I didn't know about the money," he said quietly. I studied his face. "I swear I didn't," he continued. He told me Grandma had early dementia. That he was restructuring things legally. I thought it was normal. Normal. That word again. "In our family," he said, staring into his cup, "it was always normal that you got less." There it was. Acknowledgement. It didn't erase years. But it cracked something open. "I'm not asking you to forgive him," Marcus said. "Or me. I don't want to be him." For the first time, I believed him. Recovery doesn't make someone innocent. But it can make them different. 6 months after the arrest, sentencing day arrived. My father stood straighter than expected. Pride can survive almost anything. The judge reviewed the financial damage. The emotional harm. The physical risk to a child. Then she spoke clearly. Breach of trust is one of the most corrosive crimes within a family. This court will not minimize it. He was sentenced to 4 years in state prison. Restitution ordered. Financial penalties. Permanent revocation of power over my grandmother's estate. 4 years. Not forever. But enough. As he was escorted out, he finally looked at me. Not with anger. Not even with hatred. With disbelief. As if he still couldn't understand how the invisible daughter became the one who brought him down. My grandmother moved out of assisted living 2 months later. Not back to the old house. We sold it. She insisted. "I don't want those walls anymore," she said. She bought a small cottage near ours. Sunlight. Garden space. No secrets. The trust was restored to its original form. Equal. No clauses. No conditions. No manipulation. Marcus remained in treatment and started working part-time for a local contractor. Slow steps. But real ones. And me. I stopped trying to earn love that was never offered freely. I stopped apologizing for existing. Sometimes I still hear that sentence in my head. Get rid of that child. But now it's quieter, because every night, I walk into Lily's room. I pick her up. I hold her close. And I whisper. No one will ever trade you. Prison didn't end the story. It just removed the loudest voice in it. The silence that followed was harder than I expected. For months after my father was sentenced, I would wake up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing. I'd hear the echo of his voice in my head. I'd feel the phantom slip of my heel on the staircase. Daniel would wake up instantly when I shifted beside him. You're safe, he'd whisper. I believed him. But safety and peace are not the same thing. I hadn't planned on seeing him. I told myself I wouldn't. But 6 months into his sentence, I got a letter. 3 pages. Careful handwriting. No apology. He wrote about the unfairness of the court. About betrayal. About how families should protect each other. At the very bottom, one line stood out. You owe me a conversation. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Oh. The word tasted familiar. I almost threw the letter away. Instead, 2 weeks later, I found myself walking into the state correctional facility with my palms sweating. The visiting room smelled like disinfectant and metal. When he walked in, he looked older. Thinner. His hair more grey than I remembered. But his posture was the same. Controlled. He sat across from me. You look well, he said. I didn't respond. You didn't have to do this publicly, he continued. We could have handled it privately. My hands went cold. You pushed me down a staircase while I was holding your granddaughter, I said evenly. His jaw tightened. I lost my balance. No, I said. You lost control. Silence stretched between us. I was protecting this family, he said finally. Your brother would have lost everything. And that justified stealing from your mother? I asked. He didn't answer directly. He never did. You've always been dramatic, he said instead. There it was. Minimization. Deflection. Control. I leaned forward slightly. You know what the difference is now? I asked quietly. He frowned. I don't need you to admit it. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Fear. No. Irrelevance. That was worse. I stood up. This is the last time I'm coming, I said. He didn't stop me. For once in my life, he had no leverage. I didn't think I needed therapy. I was wrong. The therapist's office was small and warm. Soft lighting. No judgment. The first session, I talked about the staircase. The second, I talked about Marcus. The third, I talked about cereal. That surprised me. I told her how, when I was 9, I asked for the good cereal, the kind Marcus got. My father had looked at me and said, you don't need it. It sounds small. But it wasn't about cereal. It was about worth. Children don't measure love in grand gestures. They measure it in bowls. In glances. In who gets the red ribbon on the Jeep. You internalized conditional love, my therapist said gently. I nodded. I thought if I achieved enough, I'd earn it. And now? I swallowed. Now I'm learning I never needed to. Healing isn't dramatic. It's repetitive. It's noticing when you apologize for things that aren't your fault. It's stopping mid-sentence when you start to say, I'm sorry, but. It's learning you don't need a but. Marcus finished rehab a year after sentencing. He asked to come over for dinner. Daniel left the choice to me. I said yes. He brought a store-bought pie and stood awkwardly in our kitchen like a teenager meeting his girlfriend's parents. Lily toddled across the floor with unsteady steps. He watched her carefully. She looks like you, he said softly. I almost laughed. No one's ever said that before. He looked ashamed. I know, he replied. After dinner, he stayed behind while Daniel put Lily to bed. I was angry at you for years, Marcus said quietly. Why? I asked. Because Dad compared me to you when I failed, he admitted. Said you were more responsible. More careful. I blinked. That's not how I remember it. He let out a short breath. That's the problem. We grew up in the same house. But not in the same reality. He was pressured to succeed. I was dismissed before I tried. Two different wounds. Same source. I'm trying to build something on my own now, he said. Without him. I nodded. I hope you do. It wasn't forgiveness. Not fully. But it wasn't war anymore either. My grandmother moved into her cottage that spring. She planted tomatoes first. Then roses. Then a small oak sapling in the back corner of the yard. For long-term thinking, she said with a wink. She rarely spoke about my father. But one afternoon, while we were trimming basil, she said quietly, I loved him very much. I didn't know what to say. I still do, she added. That's the hardest part. I looked at her weathered hands. Love doesn't erase accountability, she continued. But it does make it complicated. That was the most honest thing anyone had said about him. 2 years later, Lily had her first preschool performance. Paper wings taped to her shoulders. A crooked halo. A smile that could split the sky open. Daniel filmed the entire thing. Marcus sat in the second row. My grandmother clapped louder than anyone. There was one empty seat beside me. For a moment, I felt the old ache. The one that whispers, maybe he would have changed. But then Lily spotted me in the audience and waved wildly. And the ache quieted. Because generational patterns don't break with dramatic speeches. They break in small, consistent moments. In showing up. In staying calm. In never making your child feel like a bargaining chip. On the 3rd anniversary of the staircase, I wrote him a letter. I never mailed it. But I wrote it. I told him. You taught me how to survive in silence. You taught me how to anticipate anger before it exploded. You taught me how to shrink. And then, unintentionally, you taught me how to fight back. I don't hate you. But I don't need you. That sentence felt like oxygen. When his sentence ended, I didn't go to the release. Marcus did. He told me our father looked older. Slower. He moved into a small apartment 2 towns over. No grand return. No apology tour. Just quiet obscurity. He never contacted me again. And I didn't contact him. Some endings don't need confrontation. They just need distance. One evening, Lily, now 5, asked me, Mommy, who gave you this house? I smiled. Your great-grandma helped. She thought for a moment. Did Grandpa help? I knelt down. No, I said gently. But I learned something from him. What? I brushed her hair back. What not to become. She nodded as if that made perfect sense. Kids are wise like that. The oak tree in my grandmother's yard is taller now. Not enormous. But steady. Strong. Roots deep. Every year on September 19th, we sit under it together. Not to remember the fall. But to remember the stand. I used to think the story was about money. Or justice. Or revenge. It wasn't. It was about visibility. The invisible daughter grew up. She became a mother. And when someone tried to erase her child the way she had been erased, she refused. And that refusal changed everything. 2 years after his release, my father showed up unannounced. Not at my door. At my grandmother's. He looked smaller than ever. Not angry. Not powerful. Just tired. I just wanted to see you, he told her. She didn't let him inside. She stepped onto the porch instead. I lost my son the day you chose greed, she said quietly. He tried to blame stress. Pressure. Marcus. Me. But she didn't argue. I forgave you, she said. But forgiveness doesn't mean access. That was the difference between weakness and strength. He left without shouting. For the first time in his life, no one tried to stop him. Lily turned 7. One afternoon she spilled juice all over the living room rug. She froze. Her eyes filled with fear. I'm sorry, she whispered quickly. I'll clean it. I promise. I'll be better. The words hit me like a mirror from my childhood. I knelt down. Hey, I said gently. It's just juice. She blinked. You're not mad. No, I smiled. Accidents don't change how much I love you. She burst into tears. Not because she was scared. Because she was relieved. That's when I knew the pattern had truly broken. Marcus started his own small contracting business. Slow growth. Honest work. One evening he handed me an envelope. Inside was a check. For Grandma, he said. From my profits. I want to help pay back what Dad took. I stared at him. You don't owe that, I said. I know, he replied. But I need to. Accountability looks different than punishment. It's quiet. It's steady. It's chosen. Years later, Lily asked again about her grandfather. I didn't hide the truth. He made some very bad choices, I explained carefully. And he hurt people. Is he evil? She asked. I shook my head. No. But he let his fear control him. She thought about that. Will I ever do that? I hugged her close. Not if you keep telling the truth. On Lily's 10th birthday, our backyard was full of noise and laughter. Daniel was grilling. Marcus was setting up decorations. My grandmother sat under the oak tree, smiling. I looked around and realized something powerful. No one was competing. No one was comparing. No one was bargaining. Love wasn't conditional here. It wasn't earned. It was given freely. And that was the real inheritance. Not money. Not property. Not revenge. Freedom.